November 13th, what chaos. DJ Bean, Keith Blackburn. Busy old weekend in the NHL. Busy old weekend for our friendship. We went to a concert over the weekend. How are you, Peter?
I'm great. We saw my favorite band in the world last night, the 1975.
Big hockey band.
For those wondering, I did not get an invite.
You did get an invite. That's bullshit. We invited Sean. He was driving back from Buffalo for the 19th time in the past 2 weeks, so he was not able to come. But we are seeing the 1975 again this week, and you will be there.
Do you think the 1975, specifically Matty Healy, knows what hockey is?
No idea.
Do you think they know what Buffalo is?
I think that there's zero chance any of them know anything about hockey, but I think that Matty Healy would be hugely into hockey if he gave it a chance because he just likes chaos.
Also, what was that shot at Buffalo? You don't think they know anything about the greatest city on earth?
I think it's very much in play that none of the fellas, be it Matty, George, who else is in the band?
No idea. Those are the two.
Really? Who's Ross, the bass player?
Ross is the tall bass player with the
man
hair.
bun,
Yeah.
and just got a great body on him.
I
don't
didn't
think they know
realize
what
until
Buffalo
last
is.
night.
Unless they've played Buffalo, they probably don't know what Buffalo is. They're from across the pond.
I didn't realize it until last night that the 1975 fans love Ross.
I'm a George guy.
I'm a George guy as well.
I like George. He's got a nice way about him, but
he's the brains.
Matty was on one, and the NHL world was on one. We'll give you some quick news that the Hall of Fame, the inductions didn't happen, but the announcement was made. A group headline by Henrik Lundqvist, Tom Barrasso, Mike Vernon, Pierre Turgeon, Caroline Ouellette, Ken Hitchcock in there. Anybody that I missed, shout out them. The Leafs remain pretty galvanized. They got themselves another win. We'll talk Connor Bedard later in the show because friends of the podcast were bloody lovely this weekend. One of our comments was, you guys swear too much, so I'm trying to rein it in a little bit. But
I do. I like how much. So the swearing comments always happen. No matter when we start a podcast, no matter when I'm on a podcast, it's always like, "Hey, you swear too much."
Yeah,
and it's the vibe of this show is I want to talk about hockey like
we're a little edgy.
No, not at all. But
Pete's not. Hey, this ain't your grandpappy's hockey podcast. Okay, take decorum. Throw it right out the window.
This is the most badass hockey podcast in the world.
Throwing the bodies around.
Fuck. No, it's more just like this. This show is about how I talk about hockey with my pals in a very loose manner. And so whenever I'm on a podcast, I try to come off authentic, natural. And spoiler alert, I say the F word a whole lot in my day-to-day. So apologies if you think that we swear too much. We'll try to tone it down. Maybe, but like I do like that you're
nothing promised.
You're leaning into the
assholes.
You're leaning into the British slang.
Yeah, well, that's a problem. I've become a soccer guy, and so I say bloody now, and things like that. I do talk about Scran a lot. Actually, you said we're going to see the 1975 again. We're going to.
DJ says the C word a lot, by the way.
We're going to see them at Madison Square Garden, and they have some Scran there that I'm so looking forward to getting. Specifically, they have a burger there that is just like your typical arena, just loaded with sodium burger, and I cannot wait to have it. We're gonna go nuts. Actually, we have a big guest tomorrow, and the last comment made by us, correct, it is underselling it. The last comment made by us has a couple of swears in it, and the interview ends with the guest laughing at how vulgar it was, and is like, well said. Thank you. But we have a big guest today. I don't know if you ever fire up Hockey Night in Canada. This is a global podcast. We watch not only American hockey,
That's right,
but Canadian hockey. I will watch hockey featuring Canadian players even.
That's very brave of you.
I'll do Canadian. I'll do Czech. I'll do Swedish. Buddy, I'll do Finnish. We're going to go north of the border, though, today and bring in our great friend, Elliotte Friedman, who we had this discussion yesterday, I believe. There are a lot of nice people in hockey. Elliotte's like a contender for possibly the nicest.
Yeah. Ellen will be very glad that this is my first mention. We've gone several episodes without me even mentioning Ellen. Ellen's getting into hockey by listening to this show as a favor to us.
Ellen is Pete's lover.
Yes, correct. My longtime girlfriend. She is starting to get into hockey now just because she's like listening to this show, and we were watching Hockey Night in Canada, and Elliotte came on the screen, and I was like, Elliotte is the nicest guy in hockey, and she was like, he looks like a nice guy. So there we go.
Well, we can't wait to talk to him, but it is Monday, and people are pissed. One person I know is pissed is What Chaos's Pete Blackburn. Pete, are you pissed?
I'm pissed.
Why?
Number one, it's Monday. Gotta be pissed that it's Monday. No, because we did a little unscheduled chaos on Friday. We sat around. We're like, Jay Woodcroft is definitely getting fired. The Oilers lost to the Sharks. He's got to go. We sat around. We're like, what happens if he doesn't get fired by the time we want to do the show? We got to do a show anyway because it's news that he didn't get fired. And then he gets fired 2 days later after a big win. That pisses me off. And it also pisses me off for Jay Woodcroft. Never thought that I would look at Jay Woodcroft and be like, man, he's the victim here. Which, number one, he is the victim.
Oh, I would.
The Oilers did not deserve to get fired for what happened to the Oilers to start this season. I think that we talked about it at length. They needed to do something, and the easiest thing to do was to fire Jay Woodcroft. But man, I'd be pissed that you decide to fire me. They definitely decided to fire him, and I know that like it's courteous to wait until the end of a road trip and all that.
Was, I think.
But man, if you decide to fire me, fire me. Don't make me go to work for 2 more days.
But he got to do a Wolf of Wall Street, which is...
I'm not fucking leaving?
No. Oh, he's fucking leaving.
That's right. I was going to say that's not accurate.
He got to do the like it's the last time.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So the Oilers were like, hey, Jay, go out there, coach your ass off like it's the last time. And he was like, yeah. And they're like, all right, like it's the last time. And then Scott Hyman scores a hat trick.
Scott Hyman?
Sorry, I have a friend named Scott Hyman. Zach Hyman scores a hat trick. Jay Woodcroft is like, that was amazing. Mm-hmm. And the Oilers were like, that was the last time.
That's so tough.
May contain spoilers of Wolf of Wall Street if you haven't seen it before. But he got to get out on a high note.
Is it a high note, though? Like, I
think so.
I feel like
he's a free agent on a winning streak.
That's true. It would make me so much more mad to be like, you made me go to work for a couple extra days, and I got like quite possibly the best possible result that you could ask for, and I'm still losing my job.
Do you want your last game as a head coach? And I think he'll get another chance at some point, but do you want your last game as a head coach to be the Oil Shark Bowl that you fucking lost?
Yeah, because that's ultimately the reason you got fired, is because you lost that game.
Yeah, but you have one more win on your resume. And
But the win doesn't matter. That's my point.
Decision was made.
It did not matter what happened in that game. He was obviously getting fired anyway. So just fire him after the Sharks game.
Dave Manson also out, a chief assistant for the Oilers. So Woodcroft had gotten off to a 3-9-1 start, which better than 2-9-1, which is how they started. But they got that win over the Kraken, where like they looked good. They looked like the Oilers. Worth noting, Stu Skinner has been good recently since they sent Jack Campbell down. Woodcroft went 79, 41, and 13. with the Oilers, which was the 5th best record in the NHL during that time. He gets replaced by Kris Knoblauch, head coach of AHL's Hartford Wolfpack, which is the affiliate of the Rangers. And you say, who's Kris Knoblauch? I never heard of that guy. The bullet point is he was, and we have a full screen brought to you by Sean. He was the Erie Otters head coach in the OHL, coached Connor McDavid, and that's the big connection there. They get McDavid, his guy, which when we have Elliotte on, which will be a little after 12:30, I'm going to ask him, like, your claim to fame has to be something more than that, right? Like, developed Connor McDavid. Connor McDavid playing against people his own age, he was always going to eat and look incredible. So I hope I hope he's shown something more than just, whoa, he coached Connor McDavid.
Yeah, I don't know too much about Knoblauch. You know,
Nice preparation.
No disrespect to this man. I don't know this man.
Kiki Palmer. Kiki Peter.
Yeah, that's right. But from what I've seen, he's been, thrown around as a NHL head coaching candidate for quite some time. So it's not like this is just out of nowhere. Let's get Connor McDavid's high school hockey coach and see if that works. So like it seems like he's been ready to crack the biz, as they say, and make the jump. My big question is, like, obviously it is a very desirable job to coach Connor McDavid and Leon Draisaitl, but like, is this a good position? Is this an ideal scenario for Kris Knoblauch, specifically here? Because people are going to look at this, as we're already making the connection, as like, this is McDavid's guy. So like, did he get the job just because he coached McDavid and had success with that? And like, is it a good spot because he has no room? He's never coached in the NHL before, and he has no real room to have growing pains with this Oilers team because they're already in such a deep hole.
That is a good point. Sean, did that full screen say he doesn't have any NHL experience, right? Like no like assistant coach,
He
no
was
video
with the Flyers.
Flyers.
Assistant coach.
And
Okay.
this was,
Flyers.
I'll tell you, through 2019, they were starting to 2019 into 2020, things were starting to look up for the Flyers.
Still never been a head coach.
He was
at the
there
NHL
right
level.
at the end when they were good, when they were starting to look like they could eventually be good before shit hit the fan. So, tell you what, it's a nice little feather in Kris Knoblauch's cap. That's a good point, though, by you, that this is a team that ideally people will talk about come playoff time, saying they've been playing playoff hockey for 6 months now, dating back to November. And as you were saying that, I was counting on my hand, like November, December, January, like all that. They're going to have to hit the ground running to ideally get into a wild card spot. And yeah, no growing pains. Can't stumble out the gate. But
And as we've seen, no coach can overcome bad goaltending. And Stuart Skinner has been fine for the past couple games. But if the Oilers' goaltending struggles continue, like, this isn't going to fix that.
they still need to make a goaltending move. They still need, I think, for McDavid and Ekholm to kind of get right. Like the Oilers, I'll probably say this 100 times this show, the Oilers were Oilery before Jay Woodcroft. They'll be Oilery long after Kris Knoblauch is even gone. That is something that, like, I got the jersey behind me.
DNA.
You can't fire the jersey, though.
That's
so,
true.
like, you had to do something. I do absolutely see Jay Woodcroft as a victim. When you're a Stanley Cup favorite, like they were one of the favorites, and a lot of people's cool, sexy pick to win the Stanley Cup, I thought they were going to stumble out of the gate anyway. I didn't think they were going to stumble this bad. And I bet that the Oilers didn't want to do this.
Oh, they definitely didn't want to do this.
Not like they didn't want to start poorly. Like, I bet they did not want to fire Jay Woodcroft. For the financial component of it. Not that Jay Woodcroft was probably making a ton of money because he was a first-time NHL head coach. But I think they thought he was a good coach, and I think he's a good coach.
I mean, it's crazy to think, but he only had one full season coaching the Oilers, and
he was awesome.
And he won playoff rounds in both of the seasons that he brought him into the playoffs. So,
fucking Aiden Hill,
right? So like he had to fall on the sword and had to get thrown under the bus, whatever term you want to put on it. But I think that they were kind of forced to fire him based off of the start, but at the same time, he didn't deserve it. Both things, I think, can make sense in this case.
We'll also ask Elliotte about Ken Holland and like who is really pulling the strings here, because Elliotte has said on his podcast that Ken Holland, this is expected to be it for him. This is expected to be his last year. He's been doing it forever. Maybe he retires after this. So is it the Oilers CEO, Jeff Jackson, who's just making all the calls here? And I don't know his hockey acumen well enough to know if these are going to be the right calls. If you're the Oilers now with a new head coach, you think you're making a run here. Now are you open to trading things like your first round pick? If things get so bad, do you pull the plug on this season and do you trade guys? Do veterans like Leon Draisaitl want out? And if they do you grant those kinds of wishes when you had such designs this year and long term of doing great things? Lots of questions to be asked about the Edmonton Oilers.
The Knoblauch era, not to be confused with the Knoblauch error. That's a baseball joke.
Chuck Knoblauch had the yips.
That's right. He liked to throw the ball into the stands.
Are the Oilers going to have the yips? Meaning, will they sign Brandon Yip? That's a hockey reference. And maybe any relatives of Brandon Yip.
There you go. The Knoblauch era begins tonight.
Yeah.
Who do the Oilers have tonight? I forget.
They have the... Who do they have?
That's a good question. Love to ask that question. The
Islanders.
Islanders, that's right.
In Edmonton.
So that's one way to make an Islanders game exciting.
Have we talked to any Islanders this show?
No.
I don't think so.
I feel like I'm allowed to make that joke because I did an Islanders podcast last week because they played the Bruins. I did an Islanders podcast last week, and they were like, does everybody think we're boring? And I was like, yeah, kind of.
So if that was the Oil Shark Bowl last week when the Oilers played the Sharks, what is tonight's game between the Oilers and Islanders? There is a correct answer.
Oil Island?
It's the Griffin Reinhart.
Oh,
game.
Griffin Reinhart Bowl.
Famously, in the year that the Oilers picked Connor McDavid first overall, they also traded, I think, the 16th overall pick and the 33rd overall pick to the Islanders for Griffin Reinhart. The pick in the first they traded to the Islanders became Matt Barzal.
Maybe Peter Chiarelli's worst move ever, which is saying a lot.
His best move ever was just fucking picking McDavid number one. A slept-on thing with Peter Chiarelli in Edmonton is that he kept Leon Draisaitl.
That's
because
right.
Teams wanted him. The Canadians wanted him for PK Subban. Yeah, like that wasn't the slam dunk. That like somebody else might have come in and been like, I need to make my splash. I need to surround Connor McDavid with veterans. I'll trade this third overall pick from a year ago that I didn't make. Whatever. No one's going to be mad if he ends up being good. Peter Chiarelli went, watched the hell out of Draisaitl, loved him, held on to him. Traded Taylor Hall instead, which not that bad a trade. Taylor Hall for Adam Larson, not that bad a trade.
It was a bad trade.
It was a bad trade,
Yeah.
but for a guy that made a bunch of amazing trades and quite a few terrible trades, I don't think that
It certainly didn't
is-
help that Taylor Hall won MVP in Jersey.
Yeah, but even that was like the weakest MVP
It was
ever.
the weakest MVP win.
That was the weakest MVP ever.
that was tough.
A wing on the Devils. Love the Devils.
But it was like he had like 40 more points than everybody else on that roster, and they made the playoffs.
He had to.
By the way, if you're watching, we got a lot of people in the YouTube comments right now. If you're watching live, thank you very much. Subscribe to the YouTube channel. If you're listening on Spotify and Apple Podcasts when this comes out later, please subscribe on YouTube. We want to get those numbers up.
Give 5 stars. It
Also-
helps so much.
Smash the like button.
That's right.
Smarsh it, man.
Free.
Like it helps. It helps, and I say man to mean like y'all. Smarsh it, y'all. It helps us book guests when we say, hey, we're the #2 hockey podcast on these charts. we want this guest, and then people say yes. But we have some killer guests this week. You are going to be thrilled with tomorrow's episode, where we will unveil at least one amazing guest, possibly up to 8. And on Thursday, pretty much Tuesdays and Thursdays, we're going to have the big guests, because on Mondays and Wednesdays, we'll be reacting to a hockey day, because Tuesdays, Thursdays, and Saturdays are the big hockey days schedule-wise. So we're also going to be on location a little bit this week, so we'll be moving around. Tomorrow's episode, we're going to do late tonight, which will be great because we'll be reacting to the Islanders, Griffin Reinhart game. But tomorrow, we're also going to have some great guests. But again, smash all those buttons, and let me tell you about Olipop.
Okay.
Pete's sucking a little bit of it right now.
I am. This is the first time ever doing the classic grape.
How do you have the... Sean won't shut up about the grape.
That's my favorite flavor.
I like the grape a lot. I'm not a grape soda kind of guy, so I was surprised at how much I like this, and I do like this a lot.
I'm a big grape soda guy, and you were saying the only thing that you don't like about it is you were told it had more than 5 grams of sugar, and you really wanted a lot of sugar. But sorry, folks, if you want a bunch of sugar making you feel lethargic throughout the day, Olipop, they're just too good for you, because all of their flavors under, less than, fewer than 5 grams of sugar. It's a soda that drinks like a soda, feels like a soda, and doesn't weigh you down. It's amazing. I keep saying it's a cheat code. Buddy, that's because it is. Use chaos at checkout on drinkolipop.com for 25... I've been saying it as a joke so long that now I'm actually saying it. For 20% off your next Olipop order. You can also find it in over 22,000 stores across the country, including Walmart, Target, and Whole Foods. They got the delicious flavors. It's a prebiotic soda. It makes you regular as heck. I'll tell you what, on Saturday, I didn't have any Olipop, and I was like, why don't I feel as good as I usually do? Because I hadn't had my cream soda.
This guy was irregular.
I was irregular. I didn't have my cream soda. I didn't have my lemon lime. I didn't have my root beer. I didn't have my classic cola. I just didn't have the things in my life that I wanted. So use the code CHAOS for 20% off your next order on drinkolipop.com.
I like that this has become our first recurring bit, is that it's the read. It's the ad read. And we're getting a lot of people like sending us pictures of them drinking Olipop. We are influencing.
In our podcasting career, we have made an impression with our reads, and
not always positive, but it seems like this one has been largely positive.
No, always positive on the listeners. On our last podcast brunch, we had to make some adjustments to how we did reads, and the listenership was not happy about it. So we began doing fake reads, though.
Famously, when you're given money to do reads for a company, you want to please the listeners more than the company.
I'm a man of the people.
That's right. One thing that I did want to talk about before we got Ellie on was the Patrick Kane rumors are heating up. He's supposedly narrowing down his list of teams that he may sign with, and decision may be coming in the next week or two. The Sabres, Red Wings, Panthers, and Rangers have been the 4 most linked teams. My question is, you might think it would be, hey, where do you want to see him go? My question is, do you even care?
If I'm interested in Patrick Kane and I don't get him, I lose exactly 0 seconds of sleep. And I'm not trying to rag on Patrick Kane, but you said the rumors are heating up. You know who else is heating up? Anybody in a room with Patrick Kane, because he's probably like, can we turn the heat up in here, because he's an old person. And
that's terrible.
I'm the same age as him, and I did the same thing. And we came into this room today, and I was like, I'm chilly.
Yeah, I mean, it is cold in the studio. We cranked the heat up to 72, which is
it's not cold in the studio. We're just old.
No, it's cold in the studio. Sean's 25. He's cold.
I was cold. My hands were cold.
we were booking some travel
I'm an old
arrangements.
soul.
I had to get Sean's birthday. It didn't feel good seeing Sean's birthday.
1998, baby.
72
Whoa.
degrees in the studio, which is, it seems high, but that's comfortable.
At any rate,
So the answer to you is no. You don't care where he goes.
No. Like I am following along with the reporting, and I'm interested to see who gets him. I don't think that coming off hip surgery at 35 years old, he can or should be counted on to be any sort of savior. There was like a little saviory stuff when he went to the Rangers last year, and even then I kind of felt that was a little misguided and unfair. He was okay with them though, and he was solid last year, but Patrick Kane, I think at this point, is more of a name than he is a presence. I hope that wherever he goes, he's great, but you do have to consider he is a little long in the tooth, and he is coming off a hip surgery.
Yeah, it's one of those situations where like I'm intrigued, but I'm not invested because I don't think that he's going to have that kind of impact. It would be still a big name, still a big draw, and I still think that he can absolutely help a team. He's just I just don't know if I see him as like the guy who puts a team over the top anymore. But I guess I'm more interested to see how good he is after the hip surgery, because it was clear that he wasn't right last year. And when he is right, he obviously can still score goals, can still impact a team offensively. Defensively, you probably know what you're getting, and it's not much. But, you know, I look at the list here of those 4 teams, and 2 of them are a lot more exciting than the other 2. The Sabres and Red Wings would be a lot more exciting than the Panthers or Rangers.
Those are my exact 2.
Yeah.
And I actually lean Red Wings.
I do too, because I think if he is right and you put him on that top line next to Larkin and DeBrincat, hell yeah.
Yeah.
Give it to me. Especially with like him and DeBrincat as you know, best buds. Maybe that's gotten overplayed.
Here's the thing about them. They used to play together in the NHL.
But that continues to happen with Patrick Kane, where it's like, oh, he wants to go to New York to play with Panarin. They're best friends. And now it's like, oh, he wants to go to Detroit and play with DeBrincat. They're best friends. How many best friends you're allowed to have when it comes to like linking you with other teams?
And like when you act long enough, you've been in movies with a few people.
Right.
If you know what I'm saying.
Also, you know where he probably has a lot of best friends? Buffalo, New York, the city that he's from.
I don't know if he does.
Yeah, I don't know if he does.
That's fair.
It depends
Actually,
on
kind of
which
a good-
industry.
True.
That was in Buffalo, right?
Yeah,
the cab
yeah,
thing?
Yeah. People don't take taxis anymore. It's fine.
I'll tell you what. A little pro tip. Shout out friend of the podcast, Abby Chin. Did like a get ready with me thing and like a day in the life. And she was traveling and she was like, a little pro tip. When I leave the airport, I take a cab. Same.
It's easier and sometimes cheaper.
If I'm ever in like in need of an Uber situation, which is less and less because I haven't been drinking, and so I drive everywhere. I'm a big street parking guy. It's a blast. But if I go to like a concert or a Celtics game or something like that, I'm a big fan of walk outside, grab a cab. No one's thinking to do it. You negotiate with them. They're a little mean to you sometimes, but that's kind of part of the charm there. And as long as you're not pulling any Patrick Kane stuff, it's a nice time.
I would much rather my driver be a little mean to me than be overly friendly.
There's also something about cab seats that just, you know, they're just like
horrible.
Yeah, but like I like that
it's like an old comfy couch. It's like it's been worn in.
It's
and
not
pissed on most of the time.
Yeah.
It's not your everyday vehicle. It's just got like a bit of
It's
a tarp
unique
on
experience.
There's nothing better than when you have too many people and then someone has to sit up front with the cab driver, because that's like the worst moment of their entire life as far as the cab driver is concerned.
I take cabs if you can. It's not a bad time.
Unless you're Patrick Kane.
So Sean, you're a Sabres guy.
I am a huge Sabres guy.
You want Patty Kane?
Yeah, I mean, I feel like that's the one team that, like, even if he's not all that on the ice, like, it's the one team that serves to benefit a lot just from Patrick Kane being back home and being a Buffalo Sabre. Like,
from just a narrative standpoint.
Yeah, ticket sales, jersey sales, like people. If Patrick Kane Sabres jerseys would fly off the shelves in South Buffalo.
Yeah, I believe that. Those are some good jerseys too.
Yeah,
But I mean, he's got a good list of jerseys in there. A Pat Kane Red Wings jersey would also slap.
Yeah.
What kind of impact do you think he will make on the Ilya Kovalchuk scale of in-season veteran signings? I put veteran in air quotes to mean like towards the end of their career, at the end of their career.
What do you mean? Like what kind of impact?
Like, I'm trying to think of recent guys who are like those mid-season Roger Clemens additions that's like they'll join on probably, I don't know what Kane's getting money-wise. I'm assuming it'll just be like 1 year, 1 million, something cheap. He's probably doing it more for love of the game at this point. Of like, is he coming in to be a real stud, or is it we're going to bring him in and just kind of see how things shake out?
Yeah, it's a good question. I'm honestly surprised that it doesn't happen more, where a guy kind of waits out the first couple of months to see what team is positioning itself better. I think most of the time guys will sign 1-year deals with like crappy teams, knowing that they'll be traded to oftentimes a team of their choosing mid-season. But I'm kind of surprised that like older dudes don't sit out the first couple of months. Maybe it's just because they like playing so much that they don't want to burn a month or two of hockey. But I don't think that it's going to happen all that often.
Yeah. We also, Sean, was that a sound?
We
Is
heard
that
a
good
sound.
All right. Do we have Elliotte?
We have Sir Elliotte.
Whoa. Joining us
Hey!
now. Oh my goodness, there he is from Hockey Night in Canada. And most importantly, the What Chaos podcast. It is Elliotte Friedman.
I don't hear him. That's unfortunate.
Shit. We don't hear you.
We're crushing it.
We're going to get you. Do we hear you? Elliotte, start talking about the movie Chinatown until we can hear you.
Okay, now I think you can hear me.
Oh,
Yes.
yeah. There it is.
Elliotte
Okay, hey,
Friedman
guys.
from Hockey Night in Canada. Another podcasting savant. We don't want to take up too much of your time, but first of all, we love you. Second of all, how did the Oilers make this decision on Jay Woodcroft? One that they probably didn't want to have to make.
Well, first of all, before I address that, I just wanted to wish the two of you guys good luck. I watched a lot last week. You guys came up with some great stuff, and I think the more good hockey content out there, the better everybody is. So I just want to wish you guys the best. I really enjoyed watching some and listening to some of the stuff last week.
Listen,
You're so nice.
I don't know if you caught the first half of the show, but we already spent enough time talking about how nice you are. Let's talk about the Oilers.
Okay, all right.
It's very nice, though. We appreciate you.
No worries, guys. Look, I think, guys, sometimes I use this line with Merrick today on his radio show. Sometimes you dictate your circumstances, and other times your circumstances dictate you. And this is what happened. B is what happened here. The Edmonton Oilers cannot afford a bad season. There's too much on the line. They're expecting to win. Leon Draisaitl's got 1 year left on his contract. Connor McDavid's got 2. If these guys are going to be happy and you're going to ensure that they're going to re-sign there, they have to be convinced you can win. Like we did an interview with Draisaitl right before the season, and I said, "What's your future?" And he said, "Oh, I knew this one was coming." And he says, "Look, like right now we're a good team. Everybody here wants to win, and everything we do is about winning." So that says to me, as long as he feels that that's the case, he's good. Now you start 3-9-1. You're sinking, even though they had the big win the other night. I think and now also you have the added change of Jeff Jackson kind of taking over this team. Ken Holland's in the last year of his deal. It's Jeff Jackson's organization now. And I think they just said, we cannot afford for this to continue. We cannot allow this year to be a flop. And even with Jay Woodcroft's really good record, they said, we're out of runway and we got to turn this around.
You mentioned keeping McDavid and Draisaitl happy, and there was the Jeff Jackson, Ken Holland split at the press conference where there seemed to be a little, whether it was disagreement or not on the same page about how we're going to answer whether the players had input here. How much input do you think that the players had in the coaching decision?
You know, Pete, I think two things can be true. That number one, that you can ask the players what's going on, but it doesn't necessarily mean that the players just had like this is the Kane mutiny at sea or anything like that. I don't believe that that is the case here. Like I'll tell you this, like one of the things I heard on the weekend was that the Oilers were calling like player agents and things like that, are saying, is there anything wrong with this guy? He's not playing well. Like, you know, we want to get him to play better. Is there something we're missing here? And that does happen. Like I have heard, like I remember Kelly Rudy telling me that one of the reasons he thought his agent was most important for him was not negotiating contracts, but because sometimes when he was going through a bad stretch, the agent would call or the GM would call the agent and say, is there anything I'm missing here in Kelly's life that's the reason he's kind of struggling a bit right now? And so do I think they talk to the players? Absolutely. Do I think they ask their opinion? Why are things going wrong? Absolutely. Do I think that McDavid or Draisaitl or anybody said, get rid of this coach? I don't believe that. I think this was Jeff Jackson's call. I think he was the person who decided that we have to do this. And the other thing is, Jeff Jackson, going back to his days as a player agent, he's been talking up Kris Knoblauch for a decade. You know, he had a lot of guys play for Kris Knoblauch at Erie on the Ontario Hockey League. When I talked to him about when he was an agent and sometimes coaching vacancies would come up, he would say, like, you should be talking up Kris Knoblauch. I think he's a really good coach. So yesterday when the change came and the word began to seep out, it might be Knoblauch, I wasn't surprised in the least. Now, do I think it helps that he's a guy who coached McDavid before and Connor Brown before and guys like that? Absolutely. But do I think that Connor McDavid was beating down the door and say, bring in Kris Knoblauch? No, I don't believe that. I don't think that's McDavid's way.
Is Jackson going to tie any hands behind Ken Holland's back when it comes to like what's his MO going to be? Is it going to be, all right, we're going for broke now? Or is it going to be, all right, our decision maker is in his last year. Don't trade any first round picks. Don't do anything that's going to potentially hurt us down the line. Like, are they more inclined to sell out or sit back and be cautious?
DJ, they were making a ton of calls last week. They were up and down the league about, let's do this, let's try this. What are you guys interested in? And the one thing I think they both agreed on was, we are a little desperate. We are calling teams from a position of weakness. And it's, as you guys have probably negotiated for things in your life, like when you're in that position, you got to be really careful what you say yes to. I think the Oilers were willing to do some things that they thought might be a bit desperate, but they had a line. And basically what I heard was that teams told them, we'll do this if you're willing to do this. And this made them, it was bad. I think it would have been bad for the Oilers. And they just said, we're not going that far. Now, do I think they're desperate to turn this around? Yes. That's why we had a coaching change yesterday. Do I think they are refusing to punt on this season? Like, I think internally they've tossed around things like the 2019 Blues. Sorry to bring that one up, Pete, while you're wearing that Bruins sweatshirt.
Much appreciated.
The 2019 Blues, I think they're talking about the Panthers last year. Like, they want to turn this around. Look, as you said, DJ, Holland's in his last year. I think Jackson, yesterday showed that Jackson is taking over as the new power broker of the Oilers organization, and he's going to have the ultimate say. I think Holland's going to continue to do the legwork on things and be an important part of the organization. But I think this is now Jackson's call. And if last week told us anything, they're not doing anything they think is ridiculously stupid.
Let me ask you this. How much does this reset the clock on panicking, the coaching change? Like, if they lose a couple more games, should we expect a trade? Should we expect more sort of waves in Edmonton?
I think that's a great question, a really good question. I don't think it resets the clock. Honestly, Pete, they're out of runway. I joke that teams have 5 stinkers a year that you have to accept. They got no room for any more stinkers. Like, their stinker vault is all used up. They have to win games now. They can't afford this anymore. Again, I think they're in a position where they're really trying to avoid doing anything stupid. I think it was all out, make a trade no matter what. They could have done it last week. if they start losing more games in a row, I guess that could change. But look, the fact that a guy who's got a 68 winning percentage coming into this year got fired 13 games into the season, I think it shows you just how important this year is for the Oilers.
I mean, also, if the Oilers were trying to not do things that are stupid, they're like 15 years behind on that.
You're just saying you can't fire the jersey though. Like you can't fire the fact that they're the Oilers, and they were Oilery before. I just said this to Pete. They're going to be Oilery long after Draisaitl, Connor McDavid, long after all of us are gone. The Oilers will be a chaotic team because it's just what they are. You brought up the 2019 Blues, which we'd kicked that around like right when the season started, and they started stumbling of if things get bad enough, do they end up in this situation? Here's what the 2019 Blues had, though. Strong down the middle, which the Oilers obviously are. They had some studs on defense, which maybe some questions there. And they eventually got good enough goaltending. Are the Oilers, whether it's Stuart Skinner becoming a lot better, and he actually has played better of late, or Campbell finding his way, or, and I know that you were talking about them making a lot of calls, doing something in the trade market, are they going to figure out the goaltending position? Because that seems like the biggest remaining domino to fall.
Well, they have to, DJ. Like, and the 2019, that was Binnington. Binnington coming alive and going on the biggest heater of his career settled everything else. Like, as good as their defense was, and it was good, and as good as they were with O'Reilly and everybody down the middle, they aren't winning anything or going anywhere if Binnington doesn't find his game. So somebody in net has to find their game. You look, like, now, I will say this. Aside from Saturday night, they have not been good in front of their goalies. I know the goalies get all the blame, but they are leaking chances. You can tell by the eye test. You can also just tell by looking at the underlying numbers. They are leaking chances. And you have to get better in front of them. You know, the other thing there, too, is that, and this is something that someone pointed out to me, there's a lot of goalies that are going to have Edmonton on their no-trade list. Like that. You know, like that's another problem here. And I don't know that happened last week, but I think it's a factor. You know, that's what someone said to me. They said, you're talking about all these goalies. Edmonton's going to do this. They can go get Allen. They can go get Gibson. They can go get Saros. They can go get whoever. I said, how many of these guys are going to say, I'm not going up there? Or you're going to have to convince me to go up there. That's another challenge that the Oilers face here.
What about Mackenzie Blackwood, who they saw last week? And
yeah,
I mean, I watched him against the Flyers last week, and granted, I'm not watching every single one of their games, but he's looked like a real find. Do they go out and call San Jose?
I have to say this, DJ, I was thinking about Blackwood. And first of all, I think you absolutely should make the phone call. I don't think you're doing your job if you don't make the phone call. But, first of all, it's not all on Blackwood. It's his game. He's had some wild games this year, like games where his save percentage has been like 950 and games where his save percentage has been like 400. Like it is a wild swing.
That's perfect for the Oilers. Right. That's how the rest of the team plays too.
That's pretty funny.
Sometimes, yeah.
That is really funny. But, the thing about Blackwood is he's got the talent. He's a really talented guy. I just think that, to me, it would depend on the cost. If it wasn't a high cost, I would think about it. But because of everything like Blackwood's been through the last couple of years, and like he should have been the New Jersey Devils goalie for a long, long, long time. Like you think where he was a few years ago, if he continues in that trajectory, New Jersey, people might be picking them to win the Stanley Cup. But it went sideways. The relationship went bad. I always think that it's like a breakup, right? Like half of it's on the team and half of it's on the player. And I would look into Blackwood, but I really want to do a deep dive into everything that happened and is he 100% dependable? And I think if you thought the answer was yes, yeah, he's definitely a guy I would take a shot on.
Do you mind if I switch gears from the Oilers? Or you have anything left?
You have a million Oilers questions.
I have a million Oilers questions, but we can't keep you all day.
We can retire the Oilers.
We just ended up talking about Patrick Kane a little bit. Do you have any nuggets to feed us with Patrick Kane and when that decision might be coming and who it might be with?
I think that, like I said, I think it's whittling down. I think I think what he wants to do is get it down to between 2 and 4 teams, and then decide, how he's going to pick them. Is he going to go visit? Is anyone going to come visit him? Is it just going to be Zoom calls? I think those are, and I think the other thing too is, what does he want? Does he want a 1-year deal, or does he want like a 2 or 3-year deal? And I think if it's like a multi-year deal, like the team that really stands out to me is a team like Buffalo, because Buffalo can do it. They've got the cap room to do it. And also the other thing is, obviously he knows Buffalo better than anybody else. So if he, like, I know that one of the things that's been discussed is, do you go for somewhere for a year, try it out, and decide if you like it? Now, Kane's got a young family. I think at times he's expressed preference that he'd rather have a multi-year deal so he doesn't have to move his family around as much. But I know others have said to him, why don't you, like, to me, like, the team that has been, I think, the most aggressive is Florida. I think they have been on Kane since July 1st, reaching out and saying, come here, come here, come here. And I think the one thing that helps a team like the Panthers is Kane wanted to wait during the season, to get healthy, but also to be who's good. And the Panthers have actually been better than I think a lot of us predicted they were going to be. They don't have a ton of money. It's not going to be a big number, but I think they want to convince him that he can help them win. I think, to me, though, if he wants something longer term, and, Buffalo, it's romantic. He knows Kevin Adams. Kevin Adams was his first roommate, took care of him his rookie year. That's where Kane would go for dinner. I've been told not to discount that relationship. I think Detroit is in there too, but I know Florida's been aggressive, and I know Buffalo is the one that can do a bit more term, and it's the most romantic situation. So those are the kind of ones I take a look at. I think also that Carolina's been around there a bit, but I just don't know if that's going to happen.
Carolina we do a romantic podcast.
Yeah,
so we're pulling for Buffalo then.
Carolina's a weird one to me. Like they seem pretty good on the right side.
They are, but I just think they love good players. And, what was the reason they lost to Florida last year? They couldn't score, right? So, like, I could see a team looking at that and saying, Patrick Kane could probably help us with a big goal or two in the postseason.
Although I do want to ask like 400 more Oilers questions. Last question. As you have consumed the podcast, and we appreciate your kind words, like, we've kind of targeted guests and players who fit the dry, irreverent thing we go for. You know the league better than anybody. Who do you think we should have on this podcast?
Oh, that's a great question.
Give us like a player.
DJ.
Yeah.
I got to tell you, I think I'll say this. I did an interview with Chris Tanev this week, and I asked him, like, who are some of the players who have great personalities that should be shown more? And his first answer was Quinn Hughes. And he said that if you talked hockey with Quinn Hughes, he could talk forever. And I kind of have seen that in small bits. I think you guys talking hockey with Quinn Hughes, I think he'd be a great guest. And lead him in with, before you ask him what musicals he likes, lead him in with the hockey first, okay? Like, and then you'll get comfortable. I think I've heard Quinn Hughes on hockey is terrific stuff.
Okay,
we're more the musicals type, but we could get to some hockey.
My favorite thing about Quinn Hughes is that he always looks like he's at the end of his rope.
Yeah.
And even in a year where he looks like he's like a lock to win Norris, he still looks like he's miserable.
He's the hockey version of Ben Affleck with a cigarette.
That is so true.
I have to say this too, and I'm sure you guys know him, but I bet you guys in Yandle would be good too.
Oh, oddly, despite like the Boston thing, and when I was around hockey more, never met Yandle, but I bet he'd be great.
Oh, he's a hilarious guy. You guys would have fun with him.
All right. Well,
if you can actually get him to answer a text message, that'll be as big a victory in itself.
Well, there's no one we have more fun with than the great Elliotte Friedman. We appreciate you for hopping on.
Yeah, thank you so much.
All right, guys. Continued success, guys.
All right, thank you very much.
Appreciate
guys.
Bye, Elliotte. 32 Thoughts podcast.
He's the best.
Hockey Night in Canada. He's on Twitter, X. It's also known.
He's also an incredible dresser. He has great style.
He looked great with the facial hair, the whole thing. Amazing. What stood out to you in that conversation, Peter?
Really kind of the I don't want to get stuck on the Patrick Kane thing, but like Patrick Kane getting term in Buffalo would be kind of wild to me.
I'm glad that he brought up that there's a possibility he also like wants a real contract, because that's always annoying. Who got bought out? The matching contracts with Zach Parise, Ryan Suter.
Yeah.
He gets bought out, and everyone was like, "Oh man, he'd be such a great fit for so many teams." And then it turned out he wanted like a real contract with real money, and I was like, "Ah, fuck this." Well, now my team can't get him.
Right. If there ever was a cautionary tale,
right?
He's not doing so hot in Dallas.
Well, I'll tell you who is doing hot. Friends of the podcast.
That's right.
Because they are going off. Frank Vatrano, 2 more goals yesterday and an assist against the Sharks. He's up to 11 goals on the season. Come on the podcast. You end up doing well.
More and more people are saying, by the way, greatest American goal scorer alive.
It's a real buzz about it. Connor Bedard, more goals over the weekend. Don't even know how many. I just know that in total, he's up to 9 goals, 13 points in 13 games. He's a point-a-game player in his rookie year. I was kind of feeling this before the season anyway, and I'm ready to lock in, which is what is, I think, a ridiculous take. I think that by the end of the season, I will not be an asshole for saying that Connor Bedard is like the second best player in the NHL.
I don't know if
the numbers won't be there, but I think that we'll be like, yeah, McDavid is obviously the best, and Bedard is already in the conversation for like the next best player.
I think given how much media attention's been paid to Connor Bedard and like how tired people got of it very quickly.
Not from us though.
Not
they
from
like
us,
ours
for sure. No. It says a lot that I'm seeing more and more people be like, oh, so this kid like was worth the hype. And I don't know how many people questioned it who have been paying attention to Connor Bedard any closely at all, because like all the signs were there that he's legit, but like to see him scoring the way that he's scoring this early on a team this bad is really impressive.
He had the crazy angle goal, and that was great, but he had another goal over the weekend.
Yeah. Where he changed angles on the break and got that release off
and just
on a rolling puck. It was unbelievable.
Like he is an insane goal scorer.
Yes.
And obviously he's going to be a great player, but like right now, he's one of the best goal scorers in the league.
Yeah, he has one of the best releases, one of the best shots in the league. And that's I was confident that was always going to be there. I was less confident about sort of how I guess confident he's playing. Like you mentioned, he goes to the tough areas in his very first game.
I love it. Yes.
And he just seems like he kind of has that swag. I liked the like, are you not entertained shrug after scoring that goal over the weekend. Like he's done that a couple times already. He's the real deal in basically all facets.
Kevin Korchinski also scored his first NHL goal recently. A stud. I want to talk about ALLCITY Lafrieniere. He ties the game with against the Blue Jackets with 11 seconds left, and then scores the game winner in the shootout. Obviously, a player, first overall pick, 2020, not quite busty, but a little like
busty.
Not quite what you want over
your
first.
Bus watch.
He was on bus watch. Is a good way of putting it.
Yeah,
he's a little busty. Just a little busty.
Cue the Photoshops.
A little busty of a player.
Lafrieniere.
AI. Let's get in the chat GPT.
What would ALLCITY Lafrieniere look like if he was a little more busty?
But they'd say we can't make celebrities. So you'd say, give me a doppelganger. Give me a busty version of a... He's playing right wing now, I think. But like a first overall pick, wing. Anyway, he's up to 11 points in 13 games. He's never had more than 39 points in a season. He's playing on the second line. He's there with Panarin, which helps.
That'll help most of the time.
Trocheck. But are we on, he's on bust watch. Is he on breakout season watch?
He could be. Yeah, I think he very well could be on breakout season watch. I mean, if he keeps coming up with big goals, it's a good way to get it done. I also think that it's probably helping him at this point that Kakko, also on bust watch, 2 points in, I think, 13 games to start this season.
He's like a bust watch headliner. And kind of has been.
They've been tied together on bust watch for years at this point, where it's like these guys, they got to get one of them to have a breakout season. Kakko is still struggling.
I think that Larry David low-key cursed Kakko.
When he was like, why'd he bench Kakko?
Right, because that always does happen with young players where there's like, oh, well, if you just played him more and if you just did this, then like what? And I'd feel that way a lot. Like when I was covering the Bruins, they did not develop a lot of young players. And they would bring guys up for a cup of coffee and they'd just be okay. And you'd be like, well, why don't you just like tell them, hey, you're going to play on the second line all week. Just go out there and don't think. And in a lot of cases, the players just weren't very good. I think that this kind of is that with Kakko, where like Larry David,
not very good.
This was years ago, but like where Larry David's like, don't punish him for getting a penalty. Just like let him feel good about his game and everything. He's like on bust watch.
I mean, you're allowed to feel good about your game when you play a good game.
That's right.
You know, so I just hope that for the sake of the Rangers, one of those guys works out and has a breakout season. Because I mean, I always hate to see guys bust.
Yeah.
Do with that what you will. Always hate to see guys bust, but I mean to have two at the same time.
It's regular.
It's important to stay regular, folks. So hope one of them works out, and maybe Lafreniere is benefiting from Kakko's slump. Maybe Kakko's benefiting from Lafreniere breaking out.
Maybe
Could go either way.
Lafreniere is busting out. Bust or bustin'. That's the new segment. Take a player who has been a disappointment at points, and we say, are they a bust or are they about to bust? Oh.
Bustin' makes me feel good.
Bustin' makes players feel good when they're busting out.
That's right.
That's about as raunchy as I think either of us should let this show get. Sean, your ears perked up when we said Kakko. Do you have a Kakko take?
No.
I thought you were like, finally.
I think it was
Bustin'.
more the busting that got me.
Yeah, you're just like, I think they're going to start saying bustin' a bunch. So I'm just about to lean in and make noises to cover it up.
Are you on the bussin' train?
Bussin'?
Yeah.
Like, do I like to say bussin'?
Yeah, you did for a while, didn't you?
Yeah, I say bussin'. I'll say that things are bussin'.
Bussin' or bustin'. But that kind of twists the bustin'.
Mainly, I was saying bussin' a lot once I saw the amazing mockumentary Theater Camp. There's a character named Troy, and he says stupid words like bussin' a lot. I like that you said, are you on the bussin' train?
Yeah.
It's a very vehicular
that's
sentence.
true. Yeah, I didn't even think about that.
That was amazing. Let's do our 3 stars. And kind of speaking of bustin', kind of shot my wad with Mackenzie Blackwood. Was going to make him a star and say, do we see him get traded at some point? But we already discussed that with Elliotte. Thank you to Elliotte. So I'm going to give a star to Roman Cechmanek, the GOAT. Died this weekend at age 52. For those people who are a little younger than me, he was a goaltender for the Philadelphia Flyers. He got drafted when he was 29, came in, was a Vezina finalist in his rookie year, was just insane for 3 years with the Flyers. Great regular season goaltender. I think he was, I believe, second in goals against average during the time that he played, which was 3 years with the Flyers in the early 2000s and 1 year with the Kings. Really bad playoff performer, had the nickname Chokemonic. Was awesome, though. Was just an awesome player for the short time that he had in the league. And died at 52 over the weekend, which is a major bummer. I saw the Flyers were very sad about his loss. And I think that Flyers fans hopefully should look back on his time fondly because he was such a fun player in the time that he played.
Yeah, my star this week, this is a hockey show, but I'm going to expand that to field hockey.
Nice.
The Watertown, Massachusetts field hockey team is currently on one of the most dominant runs that you will ever see in sports anywhere. Somebody told me about this over the weekend. It was the first that I had heard about it. This is insane. The Watertown high school field hockey team, 20-0 this season. They've won 73 straight games, and they have 40 straight shutouts. They have not given up a goal in 40 games. And they're about to play in the Massachusetts D3 semifinals this week against Sandwich. Sandwich is also 20-0-1. So big game. But Eileen Donahue's Watertown Red Raiders, or are they just the Raiders now?
They were the Red Raiders when I was growing up.
All right, so Watertown Raiders, maybe red, heading towards a perfect season with 40 straight shutouts.
So
unbelievable.
My takeaway from that is
they absolutely let up a goal on Wednesday, right?
No.
After I said that.
Get them the hell out of D3.
Yeah, I know.
How are they in D3 if they're just eating that hard?
If they're 20-0 this season and have 40 straight shutouts, that means that they more than likely haven't given up a goal in like 2 straight seasons. You got to promote them at some point.
When I played youth hockey, I was in I believe it was Squirts. I was on the Squirt Bees, and our Squirt B team was incredible. I had 1 million goals because everyone had 1 million goals. We were the only thing that we didn't practice. We just practiced breakouts. So we were the only Squirt B team that knew how to get the puck out of their zone, and like we did it cleanly. And the other team was like, what the hell is this? And we smoked every team we played. And our thing was, a lot of us had chips on our shoulder because this was my second straight year. You played 2 years in each like level. My first year of Squirts, I made the Bs. Second year, I was hoping to make the As. I made the Bs again.
Yeah.
Was real bummed. A bunch of us were in that boat.
Yeah.
And there were a lot of young players who thought they were going to make the As. They made the Bs. We had this dominant team, and our whole thing was like, we want to play our hometown's Squirt A's. We want to prove that we're better than that team.
It's the can Bama beat the worst team in the NFL?
Right. So we finally, and the coach was like, hey, it's not about that. We arranged a team. We arranged a scrimmage against the A's. Half of the team for the A's showed up because they gave it no thought. This was our Super Bowl. And they fucking smoked us.
That's the best.
It was amazing. We were like, we are too good for like. They did eventually change our schedule, so we were playing against more A teams because we were just killing teams.
Yeah,
but it was very funny.
I think you gotta. I mean, you either have to promote Watertown's field hockey team, or Eileen Donahue has to go coach somewhere else. She is clearly too good of a coach.
Edmonton.
Oh, that's a good call. They could use some defense.
Or Hartford. Hartford Wolfpack just lost but if I'm Eileen Donahue, I'm like, I don't get out of bed for
anything less than the Oilers.
Right. Well, who could be the next coach fired? We're not rooting for that in the NHL, but I don't think that anybody is really right now on fire watch.
No, DJ Smith, maybe.
Yeah, I think that once he survived
Sheldon Keefe.
Yeah. Get Eileen to Toronto.
Eileen Donahue coaching the Leafs.
That would be the
fire up the rumors.
I would be the biggest Leafs fan if we got the Don coaching the Leafs.
If I don't want to mush them, so maybe we'll wait until after the season. But Eileen Donahue, come on the podcast.
Smash every button you can. We're trying to get Quinn Hughes on to talk about Watertown field hockey.
Yes.
That would be amazing. Tomorrow, we will have at least one amazing guest. Speaking of shutouts, wink, wink, wink. You're going to want to listen to it. It's going to be fantastic. We've got some great stuff we're working on this week. For Sean, for Peter, I'm DJ. We'll talk to you soon.
Let's hug.
We all silly like the mayor.